Here's what is so karmically delicious and deserved about this, is that it is a Black woman leveling these accusations. These two can no longer hide behind the race card. They can no longer hide behind the misogyny card.
If you're wondering why we're not debating President Trump's apparent run for a third term in office and all the latest squawking from Washington, D.C., well, fear not. We will be a little later, but we begin with bombshell claims about Prince Harry. The de facto Duke of Sussex resigned last week from Sentebale, the charity he co-founded in honour of his late mother, Princess Diana. His chairwoman has now publicly accused Harry of harassment and bullying at scale.
Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organisation, and this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment. When that failed, Prince Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me. At some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorised the release of a damaging piece of news. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? It was me who was the problem because I put a whistleblower complaint about the bullying, the harassment, and the misogyny, and Prince Harry interfered in the investigation of that. So it's a cover-up, and the prince is involved.
Wow. Well, Sophie Chanduka says she's reported Sentebale's trustees to the authorities and has blown the whistle on issues including abuse of power, bullying, sexism and racism. This is, of course, ironically, the exact same charge sheet presented by Harry and Meghan against the royal family, the media and anybody else who's ever dared to challenge them over the last 5 years. Harry is further accused of planting negative press stories to smear Dr. Chanduka, a claim he notoriously levelled without evidence against his family. The Sussexes have long weaponised victim culture and the self-certification of suffering to trash their enemies and advance their brand. They've now, rather delightfully, been snared in their own trap. You might think hoisted by their own petard. And after the dismal performance of both Harry's Netflix Polo series and Meghan's god-awful Netflix lifestyle series, can we finally now declare that brand Sussex may have kicked the bucket? Well, joining me now is the author of The Psychosis of Whiteness, Professor Kehinde Andrews, the Daily Mail columnist, soon to be joining Meghan Kelly at MK Media, Maureen Callahan, and the lawyer and Uncensored contributor Paula Rhone-Adrien. Welcome to all of you. Right, Maureen, you've been off the long run on this one. But it is ironic, isn't it, that here you have Harry and Meghan who've been dishing out all the same allegations about absolutely everybody, from their own family to the media to any critic that's ever dared to take them on, that now they themselves have been accused of exactly the same stuff.
Here's what is so karmically delicious and deserved about this, is that it is a Black woman leveling these accusations. These two can no longer hide behind the race card. They can no longer hide behind the misogyny card. They have a woman who feels completely emboldened by what would seem to be facts from her point of view to say these things, not to People or Us Weekly, but to the Financial Times, to Sky News, against a couple that is highly litigious. This will not end well for Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, I mean, Paula, all women should be believed, so presumably you believe this lady, do you?
I'm not sure where you got the quote that all women should be believed from. It's not a quote that I'm familiar with. Certainly.
Well, that was the narrative. Well, hang on, that was the narrative from the Me Too campaigns, wasn't it? Was that you had to believe women when they make allegations. What's interesting here is that they've been instantly dismissed by Prince Harry, and he would have been the first person, along with his wife, to say you've got to believe the victims.
Certainly, it's appropriate to have a compassionate ear when somebody comes to you and says, look, I am surviving bullying and harassment in the workplace, or I am surviving bullying and
racism
harassment
and
in
sexism.
my home. Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And of course, what surprises me about these allegations is that they are now being litigated on the news by journalists, by reporters, instead of calmly being referenced in an appropriate statement, and
Well,
letting
like
the
Oprah
litigation
Winfrey on primetime TV, maybe?
and allowing the litigation to continue, because I understand that
Paula,
this currently is in litigation at the moment.
It's lovely to see you back on Uncensored.
Of course,
Paula,
of course.
how can you say that with a straight face? This is a couple, Harry and Meghan, who didn't do any of what you've just suggested. They went on Oprah Winfrey and absolutely blasted their families as a bunch of racist, callous
That wasn't
freaks.
in litigation,
No, but my point
Piers.
is, the point is they're being treated the same way they've treated everybody else.
The point
it's the
is-
ultimate delicious irony.
The point is, it wasn't in litigation. And I appreciate that what you are doing is licking your lips at the idea that somehow Harry and Meghan are going to feel even more pain. But that isn't the appropriate approach. What we have here is the sad dismantling of a charity that has done magnificent work for 19 years. And we now have allegations being touted and flouted, as I said, in the press. Wholly inappropriate, totally vulgar, quite frankly. And what we need to be doing, actually, is focusing on those poor children who seem to be left in abeyance.
Paula, with respect, I don't remember you saying that it was totally inappropriate and vulgar when Meghan Markle sprayed the same stuff about the royal family to Oprah.
I'm not sure that spraying is the correct terminology to use there.
What you did?
What happened was they told their story, which they are entitled to do.
So why is there a difference between what Sophie Chanduka is doing?
The difference is very simple. One is currently in litigation, Piers, and one was never considered to be appropriate for litigation. That is the point. And that is what I'm confused about, because if I was representing Dr. Chanduka, I would be very concerned that she thought it was appropriate to disseminate evidence about a case in the media.
Wow. Well, very different rules of engagement then. All right, Kehinde
Not when
Andrews,
we're talking about two different situations, Piers.
Well, we're not really. We're talking about people making allegations of racism, sexism, bullying and harassment. But it seems to me that when it's made by Harry and Meghan, they get a pass. When it's anybody else, it's inappropriate and vulgar. Kehinde Andrews, I mean, these are serious allegations from a black woman, chair of this charity. I mean, she goes on the rampage about Harry in particular, you know, and says that he's basically tried to traduce the charity in a way that she found incredibly distasteful, turning up at a big event with the Netflix cameras in tow, Meghan Markle bringing Serena Williams, elbowing her out the way in the now infamous clip that we saw with the presentation at the polo match and so on. None of this is very good, is it?
It is undoubted that when Harry and Meghan were in the family, they experienced problems, as anybody would expect. That royal family is one of the symbols of white supremacy, is deeply racist, so they experienced that. It is also true that Prince Harry is a representative of that symbol of white supremacy. What do you expect? Are we actually surprised that someone from the elite, from the aristocracy, went to Africa in his gap year, started a charity, and then acts really pompous and imperial to the black woman who runs it? This is not news. Honestly, this is not news. Two things can be true. They experience racism and they complain about it. And yes, more than likely, Harry is even if these accusations aren't true, it's deeply unlikely that Prince Harry has not acted in a colonial manner in his pet project on the African continent. So I'm not sure what the story is, to be honest.
Well, the story, Maureen, I think is pretty clear to the rest of us, which is that you've got a couple here who have spent the last 5 years lambasting everybody else as a bunch of harassing, bullying racists as they played the victim. But once again, and it's not the first time.
Piers, can't two things be true? Can't they both be true, Piers? Can't they just both be true? They experience
well, they can. Of course they can. Yeah, of course they can. But Maureen, if you look at the video again of the infamous polo presentation, what Sophie Chanduka says is that she was basically pushed out of the way. You're watching them here. She's on the left, Meghan Markle on the right, and you see Meghan Markle ushering her over to get away from Harry. So she has to duck under this trophy. And she says that because of that, there was adverse publicity that then came out of that scenario, understandably, because it looked so awful. And that she was then asked by the Sussex camp to issue a clarification that they're all happy. And she refused to be part of their PR game, already fed up with what was going on in terms of the Netflix stuff going on at that event. It was supposed to be a charity event. And that she, because of that, then got this snotty, haughty message from Harry, and she said she's kept receipts in which he was very imperious and rude to her.
So that video, Piers, says everything. I think that video is the visual manifestation of what it is to work with Harry and Meghan. Nobody is moving Meghan out of the center of the frame next to her husband. Meghan Markle will not be denied. And to Paula's earlier point, I think the reason that Sophie has begun litigating this in the press is because she says Harry was the first one to begin litigating this in the press, issuing a joint statement last week that asking her to step down was to, quote, ensure the safety and well-being of the Sentebale staff. By the way, 540 people for this charity seems like a lot of people to be employing. So I really do think, and then for her to say that their brand is toxic, that under Harry in particular, there was gross mismanagement, there was bullying, harassment at scale. Is this not everything we've heard about the churn and burn through Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's offices as they attempt to launch and relaunch brand after brand in this sort of Sisyphean effort to make themselves likable and, more importantly, marketable and profitable? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Paula, there is a long and illustrious list of allegations against him. Several people who worked at Buckingham Palace, because of NDAs, have not spoken out publicly, but I know at least one of them personally has told me about some of the bullying that went on there. They seem to have a track record, these two, of playing the victims of bullying whilst dishing it out whenever it suits them.
Well, I don't know about that, Piers, but you will know that, of course, if you work for a member of the royal family, you are signed to an NDA. You're not allowed to speak about your employment there. You're not allowed to speak about the reasons why you may have left. You're not allowed to raise a grievance, for example. So it may be, in fact, that there are hundreds of ex-employees of Buckingham Palace or the institution who have wanted to raise grievances about their employ, but of course they haven't been able to do that. Now that Prince Harry and Meghan are away from the royal family, of course, we are free to hear about those who might want to raise allegations against that. And so we need to be careful about the balance of hearing all this negativity about people complaining about Harry and Meghan. Piers, I'm sure you're very used to getting complaints about your behaviour from people, but
no, I'm not actually.
Really?
No, because I don't bully my staff. No, I'm not. No, I don't bully my staff.
I do want to come back on a point, though.
I don't harass them. I don't bully them. I'm not racist to them. I'm not sexist to them. So no, I'm not used to it at all. You might not like what I do on air, but on air is a totally different thing. You guys all come on, we all debate, we all argue. That's fine. But no, I don't. As you know, Paula, I don't think you've ever heard any allegation like that against me. So that's just not true. But with Meghan and Harry, there are endless examples of people who work for them. I mean, look at the number of people that go through their workforce. It's like a new PA every 2 minutes.
I think it's really important, though, for me to just come back and, dare I say, correct you on a point about this whole polo incident where Serena Williams was there, etc. Now, I have read the reports, and whether they have correctly quoted Dr. Chanduka or not, I don't know. But she actually does deal with this incident in one of the news reports. And she does say that while she was asked to make a statement, she said no. And
well, let's listen to her. Well, hang on. Let's listen to it. We got the clip. Hang on.
On the actual day, we had Prince Harry, which is always wonderful. The Duchess decided to attend, but she told us she wasn't attending. And she brought a friend, a very famous friend. We would have been really excited had we known ahead of time, but we didn't. And so the choreography went badly on stage because we had too many people on stage. The international press captured this, and there was a lot of talk about the Duchess. Prince Harry asked me to issue some sort of a statement in support of the Duchess, and I said I wouldn't. We cannot be an extension of the Sussex.
What would have happened if you...
The point that I wanted to make and that I have read was that Dr. Chanduka said that she didn't want to give a response, number one, because you know what would happen, or words to that effect. Now, we have to assume what she means by you know what would happen. And the assumption that I'm going to make is that the hate bots would rain down on her if she was seen to be supporting Meghan. Because we've seen that happen to a number of people who have chosen to speak positively about Meghan. People are frightened to do that. However, I do have to high-five Gwyneth Paltrow with the little performance that her and Meghan gave recently.
Has any of their behaviour changed your mind, Paula, or are you still completely deluded about them?
Delulu. Piers, I don't want to alarm you, but I'm not delusional. What I am is objective. And what concerns me is that what we are seeing is a current witch hunt, which is it's just outrageous. It's exhausting. And I just wonder what...
Do you know what I think? It's funny, isn't it? Because, Maureen, what I find outrageous and exhausting is that you've got this pair of little grifters, not my phrase, the Spotify executive who had to deal with them, pair of little grifters who trashed the royal family, trashed the monarchy, yet kept their titles and used their titles to enrich themselves with a series of vacuous projects that nobody wants to watch or read or anything else. They're trying to have their royal cake and eat it. And I see right through it, as I have done from the start. It's staggering to me that people like Paula, who are very bright, intelligent people, still fall for this claptrap. I mean, anyone who watched that ridiculous recent series of Meghan Markle cooking her cookies knows the whole thing is just a scam to use the royal title to make money.
Yes, Piers. And I'll tell you, I have to disagree with Paula here. It's actually historically been the case that if you criticize Meghan Markle, you're in for a lot of hate, a lot of criticism.
I think that's what that woman was getting at.
Defending her has historically been the easier way to go. And secondly, that Netflix series that Meghan just did, that execrable series she just put out on Netflix, episode 2, she's got Mindy Kaling in her kitchen, her fake kitchen, and Mindy makes the fatal mistake of calling Meghan Markle. And Meghan tenses right up and says so tightly, she goes, "Oh, it's so funny you call me that. You know I'm Sussex now. I'm Meghan Sussex now. Don't get it twisted. Can't have it both ways."
I completely agree with Kehinde. Go on.
What has this got to do with Meghan Markle? I mean, this is a story about Prince Harry behaving badly, bullying the woman, which, again, I'm not surprised. The royal family in Africa, that would be very on point. What on earth does this have to do with Meghan Markle? Why does it always come back to this witch hunt about Meghan Markle? There seems to be an obsession.
Well, I'll explain. I think they're as bad as each other. I think the pair of them, having made their split from the royal family to go and live in luxury in California, they hit the gravy train quickly by trashing their families. What they found is if they're not trashing their families, nobody cares about what they're doing or saying. And so now they're in a desperate spiral of increasing irrelevance and lack of success, which won't, well, hang on, Paula, I'll come to you, which won't be as successful because they're not doing the one thing which they had, which people were really interested in. Nobody wants to watch Meghan Markle in a rented property cooking stupid little meals that no one can relate to. Full stop. Nobody wanted to watch Harry in the middle of a cost of living crisis doing a show about polo, the most exclusive, luxurious sport in the world, as you must agree with, Kehinde. So my point is, I genuinely do think they're a pair of little hucksters on the make using the royal titles, right, to make themselves rich without doing any of the duties that they're supposed to do to earn the titles. And I've said for a while, and I say it again, King Charles should remove their titles. Then they can try their luck as Meghan and Harry. But when they're doing it as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, members of the British royal family, it sticks in my gullet. And judging by the polls, it sticks in the gullet of almost everybody in Britain. In fact, Paula is about the only person left whose gullet it doesn't stick in.
No, but this is the point of this. There's two things which I think are important. One, I think this vilification of Meghan is extreme and to the point. Also, actually, if you look at when she joined the family, what was their aim? It was represent the Commonwealth, be in the royal family, do all this stuff. And they really wanted to do that. I think that would have been the worst possible nightmare anyway, because the Commonwealth is absolutely outrageous and needs to end. But that was what they wanted to do. They didn't leave because they wanted to leave. They leave because they were hounded out by this kind of press vilification, which I think we can accept. And
That's not
I'm not
true.
a big fan of Meghan
That's
Markle.
simply not true.
I'm not a big fan of Meghan Markle or Prince Harry. It's 100%.
You mustn't have Monday morning quarterback-itis. The reality is, and I'll bring Maureen in here. I remember their wedding day, how universally well received that wedding was, because it was finally
that was a dream. That was a figment. That died quickly. That was all a dream.
All right. Well, okay, Maureen, I'll come to you in a moment. Okay, Kehinde, I'll stay with you. Here's what happened, because your memory is playing tricks with you. From the moment they got married, they had an unbelievably, incredibly positive press. Then they embarked on a series of rankly hypocritical moves. She had a $500,000 baby shower in New York on the day they literally posted on X, Twitter as it was then, about the need to remember child poverty. They used Elton John and George Clooney's private jets like a cab service, whilst preaching us about our carbon footprint. You're missing the point. Kehinde, they were behaving like rank hypocrites. So they got criticised for that, and they didn't like it. So their reaction was to then blame the press for being bullies, for being racist, for being sexist. In fact, what the media was doing, which we've continued to do, was highlight their rank hypocrisy. If they don't want to be criticised, don't be bloody hypocrites.
No, it's more than that. I could pick, if I had the receipts here, you can find stories where, Meghan's not doing exactly the same thing as Kate's doing. She's getting called out for it. The way she's been vilified. The way even now, like, this story is not about her, and somehow we're talking about Meghan Markle. This is constant harassment that she's got. And like I said, I'm not a big fan. And I would also distress, I think it's important to say, look, I'm not a big fan of either of them. And I'm not surprised Prince Harry's been accused of these things, but you don't have to be a good person to experience racism. You can have experienced racism and be an awful person, and you can go and perpetuate racism.
Can you explain one thing, Kehinde? Because I had to leave my show, Good Morning Britain, you may remember, for casting doubt over the allegations of racism and the denial of treatment for mental health issues that Meghan Markle said she was denied by Buckingham Palace. Interestingly, in his 420-word page or so book, his own story, Prince Harry, neither of those things ever reappeared. They weren't mentioned. It was like it never happened.
No, why was that? His story. Firstly, Piers, you did not have to leave. You chose to leave. That was your decision, and I'd say it was an.
Well, I was told to apologise.
That's your choice. I don't know.
I was told to apologise or leave. So I left because it was bullshit. It was bullshit. Bullshit at the time. Bullshit at the time. Guess what, it's bullshit today. It never appears in his book because he knows it's bullshit.
It's not his autobiography. Is his autobiography. It's not her autobiography. And when you have a public broadcaster and you have a high-profile black woman saying she's experienced these things, which so many of us have, it's one of the few times she actually felt like one of us in a very real way.
Nobody was racist to Meghan Markle.
It's not true. Of course you have to apologize. Of course you have to say, look, you don't know if it happened or not. I don't know if it happened or not. But I think there's press responsibility to say, look, maybe we don't know. Give the woman a benefit of the doubt, as we should give.
I think Maureen, if people had accused, if people had said that my family were racist to my wife and I wrote an autobiography, I might remember to include that as a fairly big thing if I talked about it on global television. It just disappeared. It was like it never happened.
Right. You might remember to include that. And you might also not say to, I believe it was either Tom Bradby or Anderson Cooper, when Harry was out flogging this book, that he never said the royals were racist.
Yeah, it was to Tom Bradby.
That. Meghan certainly never said that. The press did that. That was the bad, evil press that they're sometimes a part of and sometimes they're not. Are they in the media? Are they out of the media? He then said that Lady Susan Hussey, who those two, I believe, if I'm correct, had also implied had been racist, or there was some report that she had done or said something racist at the palace. Harry said in this very same interview, we love her. We love her. We know she's not a racist. So which is it? When you're leveling accusations like this, which are reputationally career-destroying allegations, you better have your story straight.
No, but like you said, I completely agree. Where were the allegations where either Prince Harry or Meghan Markle came and said, look, the royal family was racist? They never said that. They said we experienced these things. And they actually went out of their way to say it wasn't racist every time.
They said that members of the royal family, and we found out later, it was supposedly King Charles and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, because a Dutch version of Omid Scobie book appeared in some bizarre manner with the names revealed. So that was the people that Meghan Markle claimed had cast aspersions over the skin colour of her upcoming baby.
I don't think it was Meghan, Piers, to be fair. I think it was a conversation between Prince Harry and members of his family, and he then took
which
that
he relayed to
conversation
Meghan
back
Markle,
to
which she
Meghan.
then told Oprah Winfrey. Yeah,
Yes. But I
the
think
point
we
is
need to
the
be
names.
fair to Meghan.
But we're supposed to believe that King Charles and Kate cast, disturbing aspersions over the potential skin colour of their
don't
child.
believe that,
I mean,
Piers.
Paula,
Honestly, you don't believe that.
Paula, does any part of you believe that?
I have no idea, Piers. I am a
You've
person
no
of...
idea? You think they're a pair of racists?
I am a person of colour, and I come into contact with white people all the time, and some of them ask me about my children, and some of them ask me about the colour of my children, and members of my own family ask me about the colour of my children. And sometimes that can be in a context where I would be concerned about why I was being asked that question. And sometimes it can be in a context of where I'm being asked in the same way of what they're having for dinner in the evening. So it totally depends. But can I also just raise, you said that they never suffered racism, where you know, Piers, that that's not correct. We know because Neil Basu, who was the chief of counter-terrorism at the time, and forgive me if I've got his title wrong, but he has had to report that she did suffer with threats to her life, that some
I'm
of
not
the people...
talking about social media trolls.
Well, that some of the
about
people
that.
who threatened her life are in prison. And so these are serious things
I'm
that
not
she
talking
struggled
about
with.
that.
But
I'm not
what's
talking about that.
important for you to understand, Piers, is the context in which she heard this conversation. So it may be, Piers,
Well, she
that
never heard it.
on a sunny
She never heard
day,
it.
surrounded by the daffodils...
Hang on,
that
she never heard it.
That she would have...
As you said.
That she would have
She never heard it.
considered Prince Harry informing her about this conversation, and it would have been waters off a duck's back. It may be that for the third time that day, she had heard that her life was at threat from a member of a far-right group, and then is told about this conversation, and then starts to feel even worse.
And you say, and just to be clear, and Kehinde, I can see you nodding along with total agreement that obviously this all happened. Just to be clear, given that Meghan Markle's father is white and her mother is black, why would it be remotely unusual for a family member to say, out of interest, given the fact that her parents are two different skin colours, what would be the likelihood of the skin colour of the baby? Why does that immediately have to be a racist thing? Why can't it just be a genuine question as if you had ginger hair or not?
I've just given you the example, Piers. It's the context that you find yourself in. And if you find yourself in a context...
So you genuinely think King Charles, who has never done anything but promote good race relations around the world, that King Charles or our future Queen, Kate, but you, Paula Rhone-Adrien, think you can imagine a scenario where they're like, hang on, that baby's not going to be black, is it? It's bullshit.
I think we can save the discussion about reparations.
And you all know it is.
I think we can save the discussion about reparations and colonialism for another day.
It is.
Can I say this?
You
Can I
know
have to
it's
say this?
bullshit.
It's really important. Like I said before, you don't have to like people to think they can be victims of racism, and you could be a really nice guy and still do racist things. The royal family, Prince Charles, is not surprising at all, if that's what you thought. I think none of us were surprised. The least surprising thing in that interview was that somebody in the aristocracy could look at it and say, "Oh, how dark's the baby going to be?" And if it was in that context, of course you're going to be upset about it. Meghan obviously doesn't have too much knowledge about the royal family, didn't know what to expect. Like I said, this is someone that wouldn't surprise me. But if you really honestly try and tell me that you can't imagine how old is King Charles? What? 70, 80, would have dodgy views on the color of children, then you shows a complete ignorance of racism in this country. Complete ignorance of racism in this country.
Happened. Maureen, what happens with these two now? I mean, it seems to me they're on a sort of never-ending spiral to just really cheap irrelevance. But what happens? What's the view in America about them?
The view in America is that a divorce is on the card for 2025 or 2026. This marriage is in the celebrity death pool. They have been choked off of any and all information pertaining to the royals. And it's so dire that Harry only learned that King Charles had been hospitalized for complications due to his cancer treatment on the news. Meghan is busying herself over here with launching podcast number 2, which nobody wants to listen to, with prepping her jams and preserves for sale at Netflix stores in a couple of malls in this entire country. She has she's hawking her wedding makeup, her 8-year-old wedding makeup on her website with affiliate links so she can get a cut. You know, this is where her mind is at, while Harry's father is in the fight of his life, while his brother, as we know from Jason Nauf, had the worst year of his life, absolutely brutal, with the dual cancer diagnoses of King Charles and Catherine, Princess of Wales. And he's got nothing to do with himself. The reports are that he is lonelier than ever in Montecito. He has no friends. He has zero relationship with his family. We just read that he cut off Eugenie, Princess Eugenie. And so what is he going to do with all this unstructured time?
Hang on, I'm glad you mentioned that.
On how many ways his life has gone wrong.
Well, that was because of me, actually, the Eugenie thing, because she was having lunch with me and a group of people in a pub in London, and I was seen hugging them goodbye, and Harry saw this and went completely ballistic. I can confirm, breaking news, that is entirely true.
You're doing the Lord's work, Piers.
Sorry?
Yeah, so it's extremely grim, and it seems that he is isolating himself further and further. And Meghan can do a cute little video over at Gwyneth's house, but if she thinks Gwyneth is really welcoming her into this contracting health and wellness space for women, she's even more delusional than we thought.
Well, let's go to somebody who may be even more delusional, Paula. Sophie Chanduka says she suffered not just misogyny, but misogynoir, yeah. A new word for me. Misogyny directed at black women. She said the board felt that, oh my goodness, the Africans are taking over. I presume, like Kehinde, you would strongly condemn such appalling racism by that board.
If that is found to be the case by the trial that will no doubt ensue, absolutely. It's an allegation that is going to be investigated, and it's important that it is.
So you only believe allegations if they are substantiated in court? You don't believe them otherwise?
It's not about what I believe, Piers, and shock horror...
Well, do you believe her or not?
Right, Piers, shock horror...
Do you believe her or not?
We don't know the whole truth. We don't know what's happened.
But that didn't stop you believing Meghan and Harry when they were making the claims about the royals being racist, did it?
I don't think you've got me on record at all once saying I have believed anybody. What you have me on record saying is take a breath, be objective and consider what is being said. That's all I ask. That's all I ask the hate bots to do, quite frankly, because it is wild, Piers.
Kehinde, the same question. This poor woman says she suffered misogynoir hatred towards black women, and said the board felt that, oh my goodness, the Africans are taking over. You must abhor such racism by that board.
Of course, and I'm not surprised. Like I said, I'm not surprised. You look at NGOs, you look at charities, you look at these wealthy philanthropists that go, it rings true. And I just stress, I believe Meghan because what she said rang true, and I believe the chair of the board, the CEO, because it rings true. Both these things can be true. You can experience racism and perpetuate racism at exactly the same time. And I think that's how we should view these things.
It's a shame that Harry didn't get his own memo about how you speak to black people, isn't it? Black women.
Well, just because he married a black woman doesn't mean he's not going to be racist, doesn't mean he's not going to have misogyny, doesn't mean he's going to be the perfect guy, doesn't mean he's going to be woke in your terms at all. You shouldn't expect anything because somebody marries a black woman and then experiences
There is nobody woker in the history of the world than Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. It literally in the world. The problem they've got is that nobody wants to buy into wokeism anymore. We are done with it. We're done with this kind of nonsensical
So you want to be
bullshit.
asleep? You'd rather be asleep? You'd rather be asleep, Piers?
You know what's happened with woke is Donald Trump got re-elected precisely because of the woke brigade, because they tried to convince everybody that it was fine for biological men to compete in women's sport, that everything was racist, everything was sexist, everything should be banned. They scolded, hectored, lectured us into trying to lead their joyless little lives, and everybody got sick and tired of it. Guess what? Donald Trump got re-elected. Well done, the woke brigade. You got your ultimate nightmare because you deserved it. You deserved it.
And let's see what happens to society because of it. Great. Look at that. White supremacy wins every time. I mean, on that one, I agree. White supremacy wins every time. Every time.
It won't be my fault. It'll be the fault of those who tried to play the race card when they shouldn't have done. And it was overplayed, and you know it, Kehinde, way too many times.
Underplayed, probably. But that's another story. No, this story shows we don't really understand racism. Look, this is actually an important story because what the NGOs are doing in Africa is terrible. What these charities are doing is terrible. That should be the story, not Meghan Markle. It shouldn't be about actually saying what's happening with these NGOs and charities. But somehow it comes back to Meghan Markle, and that is a shame because it actually is a really important topic.
You have the black woman leader of this charity accusing Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle, of behaving inappropriately with the charity, in forcing their Netflix show for personal commercial gain into the charity confines, damaging the charity. They couldn't use a venue they had booked because of it, damaging the profitability of the charity, and so on. It's not me saying that. It's the black woman leading the charity.
Who is also
She's the one
making
accusing
allegations,
them of misogynoir.
Who is also making allegations, Piers, against Princess of Lesotho. She's also making allegations against other black members of the trustee board. So I think we need to be clear about that as well. It just so happens.
It
just so happens.
You sound like you don't believe her, Paula.
Why do you keep saying I don't believe her or I do believe her?
I find it funny.
What I'm saying is
that you won't believe this black woman making allegations.
Piers, with my clients, they ask me all the time, do you believe me, Paula? And my response to them is always, it's not about whether I believe you or not, it's about whether I can tell the judge, whether I can persuade the judge, whether there is a case that the judge can find in your favour on. And at the moment, we don't have the facts. We don't have the evidence. We are guessing and we're making assumptions. But what I do want to say is it's very interesting that what we're hearing from Dr. Chanduka is about Prince Harry and Meghan. We're not hearing about Prince Seso. We're not hearing about the other trustees who also resigned because they felt they could not continue on the board.
Well, I look forward to Harry and Meghan making a clarifying statement in which they accuse the black woman of lying. Look at you. You see, look. You can't not laugh, you two. You can't not laugh because you know how ironic this is.
Look, I appreciate the entertainment, but it's a serious issue. Like I said, there's actually issues with the charity.
Racism is very serious.
Talking about Trump just cancelling USAID, actually, that ties into this, right? Where does the funding come from cancelling USAID? There's a whole conversation to be had about what's happening in NGOs in Africa and charity, etc. It shouldn't be about Harry and Meghan. I would say they're basically meaningless in this. They're just avatars for that discussion.
Well, I think they're basically meaningless, full stop. Some breaking news, actually, as we came on air for this, and I'm going to talk to you more because I know you know a bit about this, but Virginia Giuffre, who was the young woman who was trafficked around by Jeffrey Epstein, including allegedly to Prince Andrew. He obviously settled out of court with her. But she's had a horrific accident, hit by a bus, and she's put a statement out saying that she's in renal failure and has been told she may die within 4 days. And there's appalling pictures of her. She says she wants to see her kids before she dies. But that's all just breaking as we came on air. What do you know about this? What do you make of it?
It is just breaking. We know very little. What we do know is that her father communicated with her via social media, which seems odd to me that he wouldn't have flown or driven to her bedside. That post also implies that she has not seen her children. She says she's begging to see them before she dies, as she is reportedly separated from her husband. And it is a very, very strange post to make, one that I think will only go to, what kind of a witness she was or is. I think it will only, if God forbid she does die, give rise to further Epstein conspiracy theories that this was somehow a hit, or the conspiracy theories that still swirl around Diana, that the royals had something to do with it, that Prince Andrew may have had something to do with it. So I think the story will have legs, but it really goes to the ultimate mystery, which we will never know, which is how many powerful men, exactly who they were on Epstein's list, and how exactly it was that the then most high-value suspect in American federal custody, Jeffrey Epstein, was allowed to commit suicide in his jail cell, if that's indeed what it was.
Yeah, and why did the Queen, at the time, the Queen's second son pay a rumoured $11 million to a woman he says he never met. Anyway, we've got to leave it there. Thank you for that, Maureen. Thank you to Paula and to Kehinde. Always good to have you on Uncensored. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.